Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Chance, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for some hot takes. And today, what do you do if you have too many friends? Too many people want to play your games, and you're like, oh no, I need some larger player count games. So those are the games I'm going to talk about today, are games that can play at least 7 people. So this is not going to be those games that, oh, you can do 6 at this one, but that's a lot. Don't do 6 of this game. This one is, you're going to be able to play at least 7 people with these games. And these are going to be those ones that maybe they're best for conventions or something. Maybe you don't get to play them very often. But so are these ones worth your time? Are these worth seeking out? I've talked about some larger player counts before, player count games before, like Veiled Fate, which I've discussed in one of my other hot takes, and I had a good time with Veiled Fate. I want to play it at an even higher player count to see how it goes, because the game mode does kind of change a little bit. I want to try out some of the expansions. I think it's neat, so I'm interested in trying it out more, but we'll see if that shows up in another hot takes video. So we're going to leave that one out for today. Same thing with their Hot Streak. Talked about Hot Streak already. Absolutely love it. Done a review. Check that one out. And let's move on. Let's talk about the 5 games I have on my list. And we're going to kick things off with a very lighthearted game called Cash and Guns. So this is now an older party game out there. It is a very simple game. You're going to have a mob boss out there, which is going to generally, I think, usually change every round. Everyone's going to be dealt out a hand of cards, which are going to be blanks and 1 bullet. So essentially you get 1 shot, I believe, in this game. There might be a way, I think there's a way to get more bullets during the game, but essentially, and then there's going to be loot out in the center of the table. So your goal is to make it to survive the round to be able to collect some loot. So to start every round, everyone's going to select one of their ammo cards, which is either going to be a blank or a bullet, and then you're all simultaneously going to point your little foam fake gun, has an orange tip on it and everything, at another player at the table. And then players are going to decide, are they going to bow out or stay in? The mob boss also gets a neat little ability where they get to tell someone to point at somebody else. So if someone's pointing at them, they can be like, no, you point over there. I don't want you pointing at me. So there's some fun stuff with that. Then once everyone's there, everyone's pointing their foam gun, players are like, okay, I'm bowing out. I'm not going to be in this in the running for the loot. Basically, you're trying to decide, do you want to take the risk? Do you have 3 guns pointed at you? Are you going to take the risk and hope there's just all blanks? Essentially, if someone has a bullet, you take a hit. If you get 2 hits, you're eliminated from the game. So your goal is to survive as long as you can, so the more guns you have pointed at you, the more risky it is for you to stay in that round. If you bow out, then what they did doesn't matter. You basically duck behind some cover, and you're not going to collect any loot, though. But you do get to survive for another round. So all surviving players, you then go around the table, collect the loot from the center of the table. It's going to be things like cash or jewels or art, and then the art's going to have like a little set collection, so the more art pieces you get, the more value they are, and then whoever has the most jewels at the end is going to gain like a bonus big jewel, which is probably going to win you the game. it's a lot, but that's essentially the gist of the game. You're just going to do that until you go through a certain number of rounds and then tally up points and see who wins. So yeah, a very light-hearted party game of romp or whatever, supposed to be silly, supposed to be funny, but I will mention, while it was fine, I do have a problem with the game itself. That's because I grew up in rural Michigan. I have fired plenty of firearms in my life, various pistols, shotguns, and rifles. I've been out hunting when I was a kid. Nowadays, I'm liberal. I have no interest in owning firearms or anything, but I was trained in handling firearms. I went through hunter safety. I went through my uncle's safety course, like working with him with scoping in some of his rifles and stuff. And it's just drilled home to me to never point the barrel of a gun at another human being. Like, that is just the basic rule. Like, pretend all guns are loaded. Do not point it at another person. Now, cash and guns, these guns are very fake. They are foam. They have the trigger guard and everything, but they have the orange tips on them. They are fake. But I still just did not feel comfortable pointing this at another person. Like, something about it was overriding some of those just basic instincts, some of that basic training, and it just gave me a bit of anxiety to do this in the game. So I don't know, maybe you're not going to care. Maybe it's going to be like, oh, this is just supposed to have a fun time. And I participated. I didn't want to ruin anyone's time with this game and like start being like, oh, this is anti-gun safety or whatever, because it is just supposed to be a stupid little game. but it is not something that I felt comfortable with. I just to be honest, like I did not feel comfortable pointing this fake gun at another person. So yeah, that's just unfortunate. I just don't know if it's maybe you're going to be able to get past that. For me, it's nothing that I really would want to seek out again because I don't want to participate in that type of behavior, even though it is this light, jokey game. So it is what it is. Those are my thoughts. Let me know if you have any thoughts on it. Maybe I'm being just too harsh on this. You're like, don't worry about it. It's got the orange tip on it. You're not supposed to worry about it. I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to call that out because maybe you'll have some of those misgivings that I have with this game. Let's move on to something into the sci-fi realm, something fictional to get a little more lighthearted with this because that was a little, that was a bit of a downer, right? So let's move on to Not Alone. Now, Not Alone, out of print, but you can still get it. Like Noble Knight Games has copies. It's on eBay. You can usually get it pretty cheap. So generally, I'm trying to avoid reviewing lots of out-of-print games. I'm definitely going to talk about some because I personally like seeking out some out-of-print games that people talk highly of. And so sometimes like you hear about those games and it's like, ooh, should I seek that one out? Should I find it? Should I pay this like elevated price to try out this older game that might not be worth it? Maybe there's a newer game that kind of replaces it. So Not Alone is this one where, yeah, it's out of print, but you can probably get it for 10 to 20 bucks, depending on shipping, right? So it's not the most expensive one to seek out. And I think it's a great game. This is almost more of a filler. This one does max out at 7 though, so it's not like the highest player count game on this one, and it is a one versus all game. So one person can be playing as the carnivorous alien trying to eat the survivors on this planet, and the other players are trying to escape the planet. So the way the game is going to work is that there's going to be a round where all players are going to simultaneously select a location card from their hand that's going to say where they are going on the planet to do an action. Each one of those locations has a different action to it, so there's going to be different reasons why players want to visit certain places. And then the alien is also going to try, I think, select a card or something, and basically state where they're going. And essentially, if the alien goes to the same spot as a survivor, then they move up on their progress track. Then the survivors have their own way of moving down their progress track. And essentially it's a race. You're trying to the alien is trying to get to the end of the track first to consume or acquire or assimilate the survivors, or the survivors are trying to get to the end of their track to escape the planet. So it's this neat game where you're trying to judge what players are trying to do. And it has the mechanic, it's kind of like the Concordia mechanic is how I call it, where players are going to play cards and they're going to play them to a face-up discard pile in front of them, and they cannot retrieve those cards until they take an action to retrieve those cards. So as players play out their location cards, you're going to be able to narrow down the possible locations they can go to. Maybe they reach the point where it's like, well, they need a refresh, so they're going to the jungle or whatever to take that refresh action. So the alien gets to narrow down the choices and figure out where they're going to get a little more higher probability of capturing some of these people. And then as players add more locations to their hands, it opens up the possibilities, but then those locations become more powerful, and the alien kind of opens up more powers to trap them with some other tokens on the board and stuff. So it has this really cool kind of, it's this asymmetrical deduction game or judgment game with the other players. And I find that I was the alien in my play of this, and I had a fun time trying. I think there were 5 other players in this, and just trying to figure out what someone was trying to do. Like it was so difficult. Now, I will say, if you have AP, being the alien with that many players might not be a good idea, because you can kind of take forever to try to analyze the table and figure out what each player is trying to do. But overall, I found this to just be, it was fun. I was like, I think you're going to do this. I don't know what you're doing, but I think you're going to do this. So I'm going to go to this spot because I'm pretty sure that's what you're going to do. And then every time that person tricked me, and it was like, you went to somewhere else. What the hell? So I had a really fun time playing Not Alone. I am excited to play this one again. It is a shorter game too. You can probably knock it out in about 30 minutes. And so if you want to do back-to-back, you want to do multiple people as the alien, I think it works out great. And yeah, it is this one that plays at a larger player count, and I think it has a really good system for it too. So Not Alone, right now, from my, like I said, only one player under my belt, but I am looking forward to playing this game more. So that's going to do it for Not Alone. Let's move on to a game that is definitely not out of print, much bigger production, way more expensive. This is going to be Blood on the Clocktower. Also, this one plays 6 to 21 players. Yeah, so I've now played Blood on the Clocktower twice. I played it once at the Boise Board Game Convention last year, and then I played it once with a friend group of my brothers down in San Diego a couple weeks ago. And I will say that Blood on the Clocktower is not the type of game that I generally love. Like, I'm not a huge fan of these social deduction games, especially these large ones. So it's not a genre that I'm really drawn to, but I want to try it out. I've heard so many things about it, and I've had two very different experiences with this game from my two plays. My first play, I would say, and actually I should say after my second play, I realized that Blood on the Clocktower is a lot of metagaming. It's a deduction puzzle. Yeah, you're given this role as a villager or something, or as a demon. Doesn't matter what you are, matters what your ability is. And you're just trying to metagame and deduce what the various abilities are to figure out how people can take their actions, basically. And what type of actions are legal in the game. You're trying to understand the structure of the game with the characters that are present. Now, in my first game of this, I don't think I understood this. And there are a lot of players that have played this a lot in that game. And I felt like there were kind of two... Well, there was one group playing the game, and then probably like 4 or 5 of us not really playing the game. We were just kind of bystanders. So I didn't feel like it was the most welcoming environment to play Blood on the Clocktower. I felt like there was a lot of already cliques that were already in that game, which they had their own little groups, and they were sharing information with themselves and no one else. And it was kind of hard to really participate in that game. And then there was one person that was definitely known for being very controlling in the game. And it came down to, I was a villager in this first game, and the villagers are the good people. You're trying to eliminate the demon. The demons all know who each other are in the game. So which if you played other social deduction games, it's pretty standard. It's kind of like at the beginning of the game, if you're a good person, you basically know no information. If you're a bad person, you usually get to know who the other bad people are. And then essentially the bad people are trying to hide and reach their victory condition, while the good people are trying to figure out who the bad people are through this series of deduction that they're doing. So every night, players are going to vote to kill somebody. Possibly, maybe you're gonna nominate someone. You're going to say, I don't like John over there. I nominate John, and then you'll do a vote, and then essentially you may nominate someone else. I nominate Kristen over there because Kristen, I am not trusting her. She hasn't been telling me any truthful information yet. So we're going to nominate her, and then you're going to see if you exceed that vote, and then potentially one person will die that night. But there's going to be some abilities that'll block people from dying, and there's going to be some things that'll make people drunk so they won't actually know if the information they're getting is true or not, or if their actions are actually doing anything in the game. So yeah, lots of little structural things about how the game plays that's going to be important for players to deduce. And it's going to be hard your first time, especially if you're a villager. I feel like being a villager is a bit of a negative on the first play. If you're a demon, I feel like you got a little bit easier of a roll because the villagers are doing that full deduction puzzle. They don't know anything. They're trying to deduce everything in the game. Whereas the demons, they're just trying to hide. So they got a different game that they're trying to play. They're not really trying to deduce out every villager. They're just trying to sow discontent among the villagers and make sure people don't trust each other and figure out the best way to do that to kind of hide themselves during the game. I feel like they have an easier first game than the villagers in this. Now, yeah, so I would say it's still not something that I absolutely love. I had a bad time with that first game because of kind of those cliques and that group that was kind of gaming outside of the other players. Was not the most welcoming environment in that one. Second game, though, I had a great time. I had an absolute blast playing with my brother's friend group. He does it on like a weekly basis, basically. And I was actually the demon in this game, and I was a little stressed about that because I was like, I don't really know anyone here, and I'm basically the main bad guy. I don't like how this turned out. But overall, I had a great time doing this, like hiding and also I think being the demon or being on the bad side, like I said, it provided a more queer experience for me. It was easier for me to figure out, like, understand the structure of the game a bit more. And I feel like next time if I was a villager, I would actually do a little bit better. I would have a bit more understanding about, oh, this is what the demons are trying to do. This is the information the demons know, and that type of stuff. But Blood on the Clocktower, I'm not going to seek it out. If a friend wants to play it, I will join. Like like I said, had a good time with it. I will join it. I think I have some issues with some of the structure. I'm not a huge fan of the drunk mechanic, mainly because I don't like, there's something where someone is, yeah, if you're drunk, you don't really know who you are. And I feel like that takes agency away from the player. It's kind of like the player thinks they're doing things, but nothing they do is actually doing things. So it's really a puzzle for the other players to deduce if that player is drunk, not for that player that's drunk to deduce if they're drunk, because it's kind of like they just are drunk and everything they do is wrong, basically. And they don't know it's wrong until they figure it out it's wrong at the end or something. And I don't know, that just, to me, screams removing agency from one player. Then just the idea that there's this GM, so the game master running it, and they can kind of modify the story to make things more entertaining for everyone. I think that's good and bad. It kind of depends on the experience you want. I like my games to be very structured, where I have a very clear rule set on the victory and loss condition. And I don't really like that the GM is able to just kind of choose things to go one way or the other if they feel like the game needs a little bit of a nudge to stay on course. I don't think the GM's ever going to do anything that's going to radically alter the conditions of the game, where it's going to be like, oh, yeah, you guys were doing too well, so I just had to completely change the structure of everything that's happening. So I don't think it's going to like completely break the game, or at least from what I understand how the GM works, from what I've gleaned from the game so far. But there are some things where they get to make some decisions on what to do and things. And those decisions they're going to make the game as good as possible for their players. So yeah, is what it is. Play on the Clocktower, not my favorite. Don't want to, not really seeking out to play again. But I had a good time, and I would participate. I would be a participant in Blood on the Clocktower. All right, let's move on to something that is, I consider, pretty similar to Blood on the Clocktower. I'm going to say experience for me, but I like it way, way, way more. This is going to be Feed the Kraken. So Feed the Kraken is a sailor game. Essentially, you're at the beginning of the game, players are going to be assigned roles. They're either sailors or pirates, all on the same ship. There's also one cultist. We'll come back to that one. And essentially, you're navigating on this hex board, and players are going to be trying to either navigate to, I don't know, the right to go to the sailors' cove or whatever, and then the left is going to be the pirates, and then dead center, cultist. So essentially you're just trying to make sure the ship navigates in the proper direction. Now, just like Blood on the Clocktower, if you're a bad person at the beginning of the game, all the bad people, you're going to do this thing where you close your eyes, and all the bad people are going to open their eyes. You get to know who's on your team if you're a bad person. If you're a sailor, you know no information, so you're just trying to basically do that deduction puzzle again. You're trying to deduce who the bad people are. The way that you're going to do this is by those actions that players are going to be taking. So you have, you're going to have a captain during the game. The captain will then choose a lieutenant and a navigator, or first mate and navigator, or something like that. And what's going to happen is that I believe the lieutenant and the captain are both they're going to draw 2 location cards each. Then they're both going to add 1 location card to this navigation box. Then they're going to pass that over to the navigator. That's going to be shaken up so they don't know who put in what. And then the navigator is going to choose one of those, one from those 2 leftover cards as the direction card to go in. And this is where players can start lying about what they got. So essentially the navigator knows of 2 cards, the captain knows of 2 cards, and the lieutenant or the first mate knows of 2 cards. So essentially the captain can be like, well, I was given 2 red cards, which is the pirate card, right? And they're like, I didn't have a choice. And then the lieutenant or first mate can be like, I was given 2 blue cards. I didn't have any choice. And then essentially the navigator can then be like, there were 2 red cards in here. So I think the first mate is lying to me. I only had 2 red cards. And now other players have to decide, is the captain telling the truth? Is the first mate telling the truth? Is the navigator telling the truth? You don't know. Maybe you know because there's going to be certain cases where maybe the same team's going to be together, are going to have the same people out there, and they're going to be like, hey, we moved towards the pirate the last time you were in this group and moved towards the pirate again. I don't think I trust you anymore. But what's going to happen during the course of the game, so during the first round, you're usually just going to let things play out, see how things go. But now on the next round, this is where players might start to mutiny. So you can actually, when the navigation team is chosen, players then get the opportunity to vote with a number of these little wooden guns to say if they're going to mutiny against the captain or not. If they exceed a certain threshold, then the captain is replaced with whoever used the most guns to mutiny on the ship. And then they get to become the captain because they took over the ship or whatever. They led the mutiny. So this is where you can start to be like, okay, we don't trust that navigation team. Let's mutiny against this. And this is where the pirates can kind of team up, and if they know some information, they're like, "Ooh, we want to change the captain. We don't want to reveal who we are yet, though." So you got a little bit of a puzzle there. Or the sailors are like, "Oh, that guy's definitely a pirate. We don't want him to be the captain anymore, so we need to take it out of his hands." Getting guns is hard though too. So like you can't just mutiny every time you want. You have to be make smart decisions about when you mutiny. Now, other things that are going to happen is usually those navigation cards are going to have a little special effect on them. Some of them will be yellow ones, which are going to be move the ship straight, and that's going to be the cultist cards, and those cultist cards are going to trigger these cultist events, which will trigger some conversions, potential conversions, I should say. So essentially there starts out with just one cult leader, but the cult leader, I think, can convert up to 2 people during the course of the game, depending on how the cards shake out. And they get to bring people over to their side. And now what's cool is you have the sailors trying to go to their port, or the pirate trying to go to their port. Now the cultist has a very different goal. The cult leader is either one, trying to be sacrificed to the Kraken, because essentially you can vote to have someone thrown overboard or whatever, and the cult leader is essentially like trying to be sacrificed to their Kraken god or whatever, or the cultist is trying to get to that center port. So if they get to the center port, they also win. And I find this dynamic in this game just absolutely phenomenal. There's other cool things that happen, like you can cut out someone's tongue where they can no longer speak, but they can gesture and make grunting sounds. You have cabin searches to figure out more information from another player. And overall, I have an absolute blast playing Feed the Kraken. I also should mention that you do get assigned a pirate at the beginning, or a sailor or whatever, and everyone gets their little own asymmetric ability in this game. So you also have a little asymmetric ability that starts hitting the game, and you can reveal it and take that action at a certain time in the game to try to swing things in your favor. But overall, I get very similar vibes as Blood on the Clocktower, with a much more streamlined experience. Now, I can see that Blood on the Clocktower has an appeal for people that want like all that variability with all those roles in the game and all that deduction you can do, and just the amount of variation you can get in Blood on the Clocktower is way more than Feed the Kraken. Feed the Kraken has one game type, right? Like that's it. But I like that streamlined part of Feed the Kraken. I like that you don't need a GM. It's a very structured game. It is this imperfect deduction game, and I feel like I get very similar feelings that I get during Blood on the Clocktower, just in a shorter time frame, with a much cleaner rule set, with a easier to run experience than Blood on the Clocktower. I played Feed the Kraken twice now. I will always be happy to play it. I want to play it more, hoping we can play it again at the con. I just think it is a fantastic design. Another thing I want to mention about this is that as you reach the end of the game, you can actually, the navigator, like they can be stuck with just bad choices. Maybe they're a sailor and they're stuck with choices that are moving them to the pirate port, and they're like, well, if I choose either of these, I lose the game. So why would I choose either of these? They can actually throw themselves overboard. The navigator can be like, I'm not doing either of these commands. Jump overboard. So there is some player elimination. They're going to be out for the rest of the game, but they avoid making their team lose. Then essentially you have to redo the navigation phase because the navigator just jumped off the ship. So I find that super entertaining. I find it just a really cool mechanic in this game. And yeah, love it, love it, love it. I want to play it more. So Feed the Kraken, highly recommended. Okay. Last game of this hot takes here. This is going to be Captain Sonar. So Captain Sonar plays 2 to 8 players. I don't know why you'd play it with 2. That would be interesting to try it. But, I think you might be able to play it at 6. I don't think I'd recommend it at 4. 4 doesn't seem like the right player count. I think you could do it at 6. I also don't know if I'd recommend it at 6, but I think it'd be fine. But 8. Captain Sonar is designed as an 8-player game. Like, yeah, it says on BGG, best at 8. I've only played it at 8. It is definitely made for 8 because then you have one person for every role in the game. So you're going to have 2 teams of 4, and essentially you're going to have a captain, a radio operator, a first officer, once again, first officer, lieutenant, I don't know, the right-hand man of the captain, whatever, or woman, and then the engineer. So every team is going to have those 4 roles. And those 4 roles have their own things to do. The captain is going to be driving the ship and doing the attack action. So they're going to be the ones yelling north, east, north, south, whatever. So they're going to be going, they're moving around this map trying to hide from the other player, but also trying to find the other player. So then you have your first mate, who is going to be, they're just charging up systems. They have the easiest role. This is why you can probably play it at 6, because the first mate has kind of their management role. You don't necessarily need them, and I think it's hard to be a good first mate because a lot of people don't fall into that role easily, I don't think, because you need to really play that liaison between the engineer and the captain and make sure everything's going according to plan. But you're charging systems and just trying to help manage things. Then the engineer is going to be marking off systems, because every time your ship moves, you're taking a little bit of damage to your ship. Things are breaking down. So you don't have the best ship ever, but it is a self-repairing ship too. So if you manage to fill things in the right sequence, you get to actually erase all the damage, and you're like, oh, look at that, the ship self-repaired. We're good to go again. Very weird technology on the subs in Captain Sonar. And then the radio operator has the most stressful job in the game, and that is listening to the opposing team's captain for the directions they're yelling out. Basically, they're going to have a transparency that they're going to put over the same map that the captain has, and they're just going to be drawing lines. They're going to north, draw a line up, north, draw a line up, east, draw a line to the right. So they're going to be drawing out that, and then they're going to be trying to figure out where that transparency fits on the map, because the map is going to have like islands, it's going to have obstacles that the sub cannot move through. So you're basically trying to fit this pattern into somewhere on that map to figure out where that opposing team is, because the radio operator is the one that is going to be locating the enemy team. They're going to be saying, once those torpedoes are ready, captain's going to be like, radio operator, do you know where the enemy is? Have you found them yet? Where am I firing this torpedo? So the radio operator definitely has a very stressful job. But there's going to be some things like the first mate can call out some, I think they can ask for like the drones or something, where the other team is going to be telling them information. They're going to have to tell them maybe what sector they're in. There's 9 sectors. It's a 3x3 grid of sectors with a much smaller breakdown for movement, but they're going to have to possibly tell them what sector they're in, or you're going to do maybe the sonar action or something, where they are going to tell you 2 pieces of location information. It's either going to be sector, row, or column. So they're only going to tell you 2. Only one of those pieces have to be true. So they can give you like the correct row number, but lie on the column number. And this is where the other team has to be a bit careful, because they don't want to make their lie too obvious. Because essentially, so they might choose something, they're like, well, they know we're in this sector, so I need to choose like this row and this to be true in this column. Like, I'm just going to be off by 2 or 3 to make them, to throw off their plans a little bit. So choosing that lie is actually pretty difficult in this game. The last thing I should mention on this is real time. So you can play it turn-based, but I don't recommend that turn-based. I think it's way more fun doing it real time. So this is why that radio operator has that super stressful job of trying to track things down. And when you do those things where you like launch a torpedo or ask for a sonar action, the person that does it, they're going to yell, stop. Everyone's going to stop what they're doing. And you're going to be like, stop, torpedo launch to E4. Then the opposing team's going to be like, hit or miss. They're going to be miss, and then you continue playing. Now, there's also going to be an occasion where maybe the damage in your engineering section is just building up too much. You need a surface, because when you surface, you get to heal your entire sub. So you're going to be like, okay, surface. But when you surface as the captain, you have to yell out what zone you're in. So you're going to be surface, A2 or whatever. Now the other team knows you are in A2. The radio operator shifts their transparency. They're like, they're on C or A2, row C and column 3 or whatever. They're like, we narrowed it in. So now the other captain, because the other team gets to continue playing while the sub is surfaced, so they're going to start driving into that zone. They're going to start just zooming over to get to you to fire off that torpedo before you can dive again. Because essentially, you have to do a repair to your engineering section before you can dive. This is going to cause people to, I think you have to trace like an outline of a section on the hull on the engineer sheet and initial it to say that you've done it. So each player has to do that. You pass it down this table and everyone's going super fast, pass it back down to engineering. The engineer has to actually pick it up and show it to the other team's engineer to get approval. The other team has to be like, yes, you've done this right. You get approval. You can dive again. Engineer wipes the board. Captain yells, dive. Then the other team's probably nearing you and they're going to be like, stop, torpedo. And you're like, oh, shit. So overall, I find this to just be absolutely entertaining. I absolutely love Captain Sonar. I like teaching it. I like watching it. I like playing it. I think it's an absolute blast. Now, I will mention that every time I do this, every time I teach this game, I've only done it a few times, so I shouldn't be saying it like I do this all the time. But I do feel like the game, like once I started, I'm like, oh, this is going to go terribly. Like this seems like it's going to fall apart. Like we're not finding anything. Like we're just moving randomly around this map. I don't know if people are having a good time. I get a little stressed about it. But after about 10 or 15 minutes, then the game really starts to pick up. And it's like, you go from how on earth are we going to find the other team to we think they're in the section C3. We're going to C3. Oh, where radio operator? Where are they? Do you know where they are? Are they on this side of the island? On this side of the island? Where am I firing this torpedo? Can I yell stop? I need to move north. Okay, let's. Engineer is like, we took damage. It's like, oh man. So it gets stressful managing all those systems. Having that team together, I think it's just an absolute blast. So yeah, Captain Sonar. Unfortunately though, like I said, 8-player game, kind of a hard one to get out on just any normal occasion. But if you can get it at the table, I do recommend it. I think it's just so much fun to bring out and share with other people. And I'll be taking to the SaltCon this weekend, or next weekend. So hopefully I'll get to play it again. Looking forward to it. Okay. That's going to do it for my large player count games for this week. So just as my usual wrap up, we're just going to rapid fire through these really quick. Cash and Guns. It's an entertaining, just silly little game where I got anxiety pointing fake guns at people. So not something that I really want to play again. Not Alone. Fantastic little deduction game, one versus many. It's basically a filler where you get to deduce where the survivors are trying to go and the survivors are trying to avoid the alien. Just a lot of fun where I want to play this one again. I think going back to it and having someone else be the alien while I can be the survivor is going to be a blast. So, like I said, out of print, but should be relatively cheap to pick up if you are interested in it. Then Blood on the Clocktower, very big game. It kind of advertises itself a little bit as a story, social deduction, but to me, after playing it a second time, it is all a metagame. It is all just figuring out what are the possible action other players can take to determine if they're telling the truth or lying. So that's Blood on the Clocktower. I had a poor first game. I feel like playing with a group that is not welcoming is a bad idea in Blood on the Clocktower, but if you play with a group that is very welcoming and very just friendly to play with and more social, I had an absolute blast. I would say the second, so I called out the first game, I didn't have the greatest time. I played this with a group of gamers at a gaming convention, and I don't know. Gamers maybe aren't the most social group all the time, whereas the second game I played was with a group of people that don't play board games. The Blood on the Clocktower is what they play. It is one of the ways they socialize. Most of them are not having a large board game collection, and they're way more social, or at least they were way more social, and I had a blast playing with them. I just thought it was a good time playing with them. But not something I'm seeking out to play again, because it's really not my favorite style of game, but I did enjoy it. So take that for what it is. Next up, Feed the Kraken. I get very similar feelings as Blood on the Clocktower. Like it still has that deduction puzzle. You still have the bad team with the pirates and the good team with the sailors, but you also have that cultist thrown in there, which I really like. So you have those 3 different teams going for those victory conditions, which is a lot of fun stuff happening in this game. I like the structure of this one more. I like that it's just a nice, controlled, structured experience versus Blood on the Clocktower. So I would 100% choose Feed the Kraken over Blood on the Clocktower anytime. I look forward to playing this. I want to play it more, but it's usually played at conventions. So don't get to play it enough, but I do recommend Feed the Kraken if you do have a large group that you want to play with. Next up, Captain Sonar. Like I said, unfortunately, mostly an 8-player game. hard to get the table for, hard to plan for an 8-player game night, you know? Like, that's not something I really go for, especially, and Captain Sonar, I wouldn't say is the main game of the night either. So I wouldn't be like, we're doing an 8-player game night, we're doing Captain Sonar, we're gonna do it like 4 times back to back. I don't know if that would be my jam. I like pulling this out, doing maybe 2 or 3 games back to back, then putting it away and be done with it. So having 8 people for that situation, yeah, maybe do a game of Feed the Kraken and then Captain Sonar, or Blood on the Clocktower, then Captain Sonar. You know, you can make it work. But Captain Sonar is fantastic. I love the real-time nature. I love the chaos. I love the stress that it creates. I think it's an absolute blast. It's just, it's fun. It's a fun game. So I recommend Captain Sonar. So that's going to do it for this Friday. Thanks for watching. I felt like I rambled more than usual in this one. I don't know. Stressful week for me. So apologies if I was a little less queer than usual. It's been a lot going on, but hopefully get back on track here soon, and I'll be a little more coherent in my next reviews. But yeah, as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I'll talk to you next time.